So we are going to we're gonna start this one proper here. This is episode 311. 311 of No Laugh Track Podcast. I am here with my guest a second time, Jeff Cesario.
Yes, I was also 264.
No,
I'm going to take a guess.
Oh, that's actually pretty close. I wrote it down because I wouldn't remember.
What was it?
270.
270, not bad.
270 to 311.
Wow. That's the increase I had in my batting average after I started taking roids. Popped at about 40-45%.
Doesn't always improve batting average, but more just power than average. So good for you.
Yeah. No, I spray hit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Spray hit to the wall.
In everything I do. Even when I'm peeing, I
Wait
spray
a
hit.
minute.
Come on, everybody.
By the way, since you brought that up, I think I just hit that age where it went from maybe one trip to the bathroom at night to 2 is the minimum.
Yeah, wait till they put a Starbucks in your bathroom. Then it's really difficult then because you get the card every time you go in, you get a free punch, and you get a drink, and then you go back to bed and you go, oh, crap, now I'm peeing. This is, I don't know what's
I'll have
going
the
on.
caffeine free this time.
Yeah, right, I'll have the decaf, which incidentally apparently is a massive, I don't know why people hate it when I say that I'm going to order decaf.
Oh.
Yeah, people don't like that. People are jacked up. Like, that's what we need in this country. Yeah, let's get a little more jacked up.
Well, I mean, I am drinking an energy drink right now.
Yeah.
After I had coffee this morning.
See, maybe we should have a laid back drink is what we need. I think in the
We
country
had it
right
for
now.
years, and it was free. It was called water.
Water? No, that's not a laid back drink. You need something in it, and yet have it still taste like a raspberry shake.
Yeah. Okay.
Like maybe that text from your buddy is serendipity. Maybe we can get some of the, what's the chemical? They
have the stores now.
DPD,
Yes, THC products are still.
But then there's the other one too.
Yeah, the CBD.
CBD.
Yeah, they sell that in Minnesota now.
Yeah, I would put that, if I were Culver's, I'd slam that into a concrete tonight.
Into a concrete.
Yeah, I think you'd be selling those off the hook, baby.
I'll have a...
There's a line out to the interstate. Where's it from? Culver's. They're selling the new CBD concrete. You can get it in Snickers or cookies and cream.
Hot fudge.
Yeah, people obeying the speed limit for the first time in a long time. I think that's what we need.
And when you go to Culver's, the drive-through, you ever done that?
Yeah.
Where they have you pull up. Imagine
Yes.
if they got
yeah.
an outrageous amount of traffic from the new CBD malts,
But
concrete
boom,
mixers.
that's what we call incentivizing good ideas, because that would allow Culver's, they'd be making so much money that they could pay more young kids to go run the goods out there and go make the goods. And then if you get a CBD concrete punch card, then by your third or fourth punch, you probably don't care that it's going to take an extra 5 minutes because you're sitting there going, man, this is worth it.
Yeah, there's no hurries.
No, there's no hurries. You got a little fish on the car sound system.
Fish. That's right.
And you're just kicking back. And then they knock on your window and you're surprised.
What?
What's that? Oh, I ordered that? Oh, that's where I am. So I think that would be good for the country right now. I think it would take the edge off the whole Kavanaugh of it all.
I'm thinking about franchising as of right now.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we do that. Maybe we sub-franchise just the ice cream out of the...
just the
Culver's
concrete
equation.
mixer. Yeah. I love it. Do you remember? So the last time you were here at Acme was episode 270, as we said, November of last year. And do you remember it was just the World Series had just ended. I think it was the day after Game 7 or whatever the last game was last year.
Houston won.
Yeah.
Thriller.
Yeah.
Over.
It was a really good World Series, except the last game. If you remember that,
who they played.
That's what I was going to ask you. If you were like, here's.
I know Houston won.
Okay.
Oh boy. Yankees, Boston, Cleveland.
Was it the Dodgers?
No, because Houston. Oh, Houston's AL.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Wrong league. That's right. Houston's AL.
I always find it.
Oh, so they probably beat. Yeah, they must have beat like.
It was
Nationals?
No, it was the Dodgers.
It was the Dodgers.
Because remember, they kept showing Mary Hart and Larry King in the first row at Dodger Stadium.
Right. Wow. They have to put Larry in the first row because he's had too much garlic.
That's unique.
Breathe onto the field. Larry, just breathe onto the field. Aim it straight at the opposition's dugout. Help us out. I want to do time travel and Larry King. Tweets from time travel and Larry King. I actually started that when I first got on Twitter. I did some... For my money, King James was way better than his brother, King Richard. Just stuff like that.
You're right. Firsthand.
Say what you will, but the plague eliminated a lot of bad things, too. Stuff like that.
Right, because firsthand knowledge.
Yeah, he was there.
Witness. Witness to it all.
You think the Pope's bad now?
Right.
I saw him in a room full of altar boys in 1681. Yeah, and you can take that to the bank. Stuff like that.
Right. Ask me about 3. I don't know what number they're on now.
Yeah.
We're a long way from that.
New math. I can't even get math. Stuff like that.
And the Dodgers are in the playoffs again this year.
Dodgers looking good. Davey Roberts is just an excellent manager. And then I saw a piece on the Red Sox-Yankees rivalry because it's coming up.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to avoid it because the Yankees won last night.
And they showed the year that they broke the curse. They were down 3-1, or was it 3-0 to the Yanks? And then they won 4 in a row.
Yeah.
And part of that, a key part of that, was Dave Roberts, who was with the Red Sox for a minute. But just hustled the entire time, stole second base on a close call.
That's right.
Scored a run to tie it up. They went crazy at Fenway, and they won that game on a big Pappy homer or something like that. And then they just took off. They won like 8 in a row. They swept the series, whoever poor saps were they played in the series. They won 4 in a row against the Yanks, and then they went in the World Series and won 4 in a row.
And then it gave Jimmy Fallon a starring role in a movie a few years later.
That's right. Oh, wow, that's right. So Roberts is just that guy. He's just the guy who is game aware constantly. And that's why he's a great manager. So I would never sell the Dodgers short, even though they will have probably, unless Cleveland makes a run, they'll probably have the worst record out of everybody in the playoffs. But pretty good year for baseball when most of your teams, I think all your teams are at 90-plus wins.
I'm not sure, but
Cleveland, I think, was 90-72 or 91-71. Okay. The Dodgers were 91-71 going in. Colorado, I think they won 90 games to make wild cards. So
as a Twins fan, a thing I like to do this time of year when the playoffs start is get a count of all the former Twins that are in the playoffs.
Right.
Because my own team's not going to make it.
No, that's a very fun thing to do. I do remember, was it 3-4 years ago where they made the same kind of run that Oakland made this year. It wasn't quite to mid-90s, but I think they made a run to about 90, 91 wins and made it in the playoffs and were so gassed they got blown out by the Yankees, like 9-3 or something.
Yeah, one game,
So I felt for Oaktown last night a little bit just because, got to go into Yankee Stadium and Lord knows that's when you need just a completely insane 23-year-old pitcher from like Lumberton, Oregon, who hasn't really seen a lot of life yet and has just been throwing gourds against a barn door since he was 3.
Yeah.
Doesn't really know. Yankee Stadium, Miller Park, doesn't matter to me, and just gets out there and starts throwing BBs. Beaning people and going crazy, and then you got a shot. But if you don't have that, I don't know if you got a shot in a game like that.
It is always fun also seeing like the pitcher that you didn't see all year and then just makes a name for himself in October.
Yeah, the Brewers have an interesting approach, which I didn't realize until today when I was reading that they use an entire bullpen approach to the whole game.
Oh, are they doing the start of the...
Craig Counsell will throw a guy out there for 3 batters and then yank him.
To start the game.
Yeah, and then put somebody else in, and then he's got to...
Yeah.
Which is, quite frankly, the next great development in analytics baseball, which I'm not sure is the greatest way to go. I would, I'm a throwback, but it is the way it's going, so you may as well try to enjoy it. But, I did a corporate event It was a celebrity baseball camp. Guys could pay good money and come and be, quote unquote, instructed by members of the St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh, sure.
From
like
the classic years.
Retirees.
Mid-'60s, late 60s.
Yes.
So, and I did 30 minutes of stand-up at the banquet. And then after that, right after the banquet, Bob Gibson, Curt Flood, and Ozzie Smith come up to me. And they're like, that was great. That was unbelievable. How do you do that? And I just said, no, I'm not going to have this discussion with you guys.
Yeah.
Because how do you pitch 3 complete games in the World Series and win them all? Bobby Gibson, how do you take on the establishment as a single person in an era when he could barely find a lawyer to help him and turn baseball on its head for the players? And that was Curt Flood. And then how do you be Ozzie Smith? How do you just be Ozzie Smith?
Right. The Wizard.
And I literally said that to them, and they said, yeah, that's great, but how do you do that on stage for 30 minutes? I couldn't believe it.
Isn't that crazy?
It was. So I go back to like that era. Like I remember Warren Spahn pitching a 12-inning 4-hitter and losing 1-0. You know, God, I don't know where it changed or why it changed, but it has changed, and so we're just going to have to embrace what it is and run with it. But
there were always 3 main offensive categories to pay attention to: batting average, RBI, home run.
Yeah, which is the Triple Crown, which the kid from Milwaukee almost won this year.
Yeah, almost did. Yeah, that's right. Now, when they do stats at the bottom of the screen when I'm watching a game, OPS is the first one they list.
I don't know what on base percent. No, that's OBS. I know OBP would be on base percentage.
That's the one I know. I don't even know what it is.
OBS is the third chemical in marijuana that can be extracted for therapeutic value. And they want to know how much the guy's ingesting before every game.
I see 400 as a good average for a baseball player.
And I don't know what the WHIP is. That's a pitching stat.
Oh, I do know that one. Walks and hits per innings pitched. WHIP.
Whips per innings pitched.
Yep. And I only know that from
hits per innings pitched.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. I know that one from when I used to play
I would rather just have
baseball.
The guy go, his ERA's 273, but he's a bit wild. The average is about 4.5 walks per game, so do not go for a hot dog until about the 7th inning. You know, I would prefer just to hear it laid out that
there
way.
You go. We can wrap up a little talk about baseball here. Do you have? I'm going to give you the teams, and you give me a prediction. All right?
Yeah.
This is the series right here. First one. It starts this afternoon, Jeff.
Yes.
Rockies and Brewers.
I am hoping, being a Wisconsin kid, that the Brewers can prevail. I think the Rockies will be playing extremely loose. The Brewers might have an advantage in Game 1 and possibly Game 2 because of the 13 or 14 innings, however long it went the other night. But Colorado's going to be loosey-goosey. This is the Brewers to lose as far as everybody's concerned. I have a checkered baseball past with Milwaukee because I came up during the Braves, and they moved right before my formative baseball years, my teens.
Okay.
So I was a Braves fan. They moved to Atlanta. Nobody came in for 6 years or so.
Yeah.
So the upside of that was I was able to turn all my hormonal cravings towards the Packers during their incredible 60s stretch. But I didn't have a baseball team that I could call my own because I was living in Kenosha. I turned to the Cubs at about age 15 or 16.
That was acceptable or in the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But that was an intellectual decision. And then, oddly enough, when I moved up here to do stand-up in the 80s, I realized, wow, what a massive juvenile mistake that was to have switched to the Cubs, especially after the heartache of 69. And I just went, that was clearly an arbitrary intellectual decision. Let me go with my gut. I'm living here. I love the Twin Cities. And I started to root for the Twins. And really, that's the team I follow. But I do hope and wish the Brewers have success because I think the state will have a blast with it if they do.
Okay. Your team in L.A.
That opinion brought to you by Bananas, the banana that's guaranteed to ripen tomorrow.
Dodgers, Braves.
Wow, that's two teams that have clawed and scratched their way to get where they are. I mean, to have finished 18 games under 500 and then 18 over 500 to make it to the playoffs in Atlanta, and then to just have a ball club like Davey Roberts has put together. I mean, it's one of the few times I really feel like I can root for the Dodgers.
Okay.
There were so many years. As much as I had a tremendous respect for Tommy Lasorda, and loved what he did when he'd pull pitchers out of a game on the mound. There's great old tapes of him just swearing up a blue streak.
There should have always been a microphone on him.
So great. But they were despicable as a lineup for many, many years, just based on Steve Garvey.
Right.
So it was hard to root for them, but they got a great lineup now. They're really fun to watch, and I'm going to pull for the Dodgers, and I think they have the pitching to best the Braves.
Okay.
And I think that series is going to come down to pitching. And that opinion brought to you by Incognito. You'd never guess we're plumbers. Next.
Let me interject here that for people for the former Twin count, the Rockies.
Oh, yeah.
When they were on the other night, Drew Butera was playing a few innings. Former Dodger and former Twin.
Wow.
And former Kansas City Royal. His dad played for the Twins. Sal Butera.
Sure.
Yes, in the early '80s when you were living here, probably.
Yeah.
Just read this morning. Drew Butera left off the playoff roster.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, that hurts.
So that all my allegiance.
How did they not have
Brewers.
to set the playoff roster before the wild card game? The wild card's part of the playoffs.
Is it, or is it a game 163? No, I guess the wild card is playoffs. Good question.
It doesn't count in.
You know what? Maybe they get to switch it between every game. I mean, every series.
Maybe.
I don't know.
We'll have to find out. Now, why isn't that stat crawling across the bottom of my screen? Why don't they explain that? Take a good young Italian kid like Butera off the roster just when... You know how many kids he's got in private school? He needs this money. Come on, Rockies. You're brewing beer like it's going out of style. Pay some of that dough downward.
That's right. Then we got in the American League, Indians, Astros, Yankees, Red Sox.
Indians, Astros. Boy, the Astros are tough to pick against because they're so solid across the board. And I wouldn't mind seeing an Astros-Yankees just to see Altuve, the MVP, at 5'3", or whatever he is, standing next to Mike Judge, who is potential MVP.
Right.
At 6'8".
Yeah.
That's baseball. That's the one great thing about baseball is anybody any size can truly excel at the game. I'm going to go Astros. I think they might have a little more pitching, but, Terry Francona is just a master. He is a master. I mean, talk about great managers, and I think he's going to have Cleveland primed, and he might steal that series out from under him.
Yeah, he's really good.
That's going to be a great series to watch. That brought to you by Pandemodium. Get rid of your diarrhea in one chaotic blast with Pandemodium. Then you got Boston, New York. I heard someone say on the air the other day that everybody outside of who did they just beat? Oakland. Everybody outside of Oakland was pulling for Yankees so that it would be Boston Yankees, and I thought, you are wrong.
Right.
Everybody in maybe the television industry, because it's two massive markets, although nothing to sneeze at, San Francisco, Oakland, Bay Area is a nice market too. So I don't know what people think or why people think the rest of the country wants to see Boston and New York go at it again. I find this Yankee team eminently more likable than past Yankee teams. I think it's a fun roster. They got a good bunch of kids. A lot of them have come up through their farm system. I wasn't thrilled with the manager change, but it seems we've been working out great for them. They're gritty. They're tough. It's more the fan base that can get a little can grate on me after a while.
Sure. I
love Boston. I always loved the town. I always loved the city, and I always loved the team just for coming up and being and smiting the Yanks. So I'm going to pull for Boston. I think it'll be a fun series to watch, and I actually think they have the pitching. I think Sale may be the difference in that series.
It's pretty damn good.
And that brought to you by, oh, brother, let's see, Schlatzman's Malt Liquor, taconite filtered for your protection.
Are you? I actually do have one more thing. Finally, Bob Uecker. Are you happy for him?
What
do you have an opinion on Bob Uecker?
Period. What I don't know if something has happened to Bob Uecker.
No, just that he's
just in general.
Just because they showed him dancing in the part, 80-some-year-old guy now. Yeah,
very happy for Uecker. Look, one of the greats. Certainly an influence on the sports announcer impression and on Chet Waterhouse that I do, at the very least vocally, and an influence just in the optimism. I like that sort of throwback optimism that that Bob represents. Certainly on air, he's got a sly, wicked sense of humor off air, and by off air, I mean he can hit that cough button in a nanosecond and fire off a joke to whoever he's with that'll just take your.
So have you heard over the years stories like?
If you go online and you Google Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang telling Bob Uecker stories. I know they did it a couple of times on Stern, and I'm not sure where else, but the greatest, the greatest stories in the world, and I will not do them justice, so I will not do them.
Perfect.
But suffice it to say that he can switch gears, and to have that level of control over your thought process, you got to be beyond sharp. That's almost a gift.
Sure.
To be able to crack a filthy joke and know your fingers on the right button,
right,
and then fly right back and get down 13-2. Let's see if the Brewers can't get something going here.
That's Miller time.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So that's genius.
Yeah, for sure.
I love that stuff.
For sure. Have you been back recently to
Kenosha
or Wisconsin?
I have not. My mom passed away last March.
Oh, okay.
And she was sort of the last vestige. My dad passed away a couple of years ago, so. But my mom was nearly 95. My dad was 93 when he passed. They had good long lives. We were just talking about how science is pushing longevity north of 100, north of 120, and as we were saying. What they don't tell you is it's still all downhill after 63. So it's just a massively painful ice flow ride out to the center of Antarctica.
Yeah.
And then Eskimos, you really start to realize, it's not that cold of a thing to do to somebody. That's not a bad thing.
And then when you factor in those last years in Wisconsin, not somewhere, is that where they?
That's where they were. Yeah, right to the end. So,
okay.
And they had largely had their health and had their acumen. They were sharp as a tack right to the end. So we were very fortunate, and they were very fortunate. So,
right on.
Yeah. So
you don't get
back.
And
as I say in my act, they were arguing right to the end, but they were deaf the last 10 years, so they were arguing about two completely different things. I put the car in the garage. Well, that's why I made tomato sauce. I don't think you guys are on the same page. So
love it.
So yeah. So I don't. I'm hoping to get back just because I still have friends there, and I'd love to do. There's a couple of nice venues in Milwaukee that I'd like to explore. See if I can't.
Now, you've mentioned the character, and we talked about it last time, but when you were here last year, that's when you had just signed the contract that
to do the podcast
was going to start, and now you've got dozens of episodes.
Yes, 9 months in the can. We're up to, I think, close to 40 episodes now, 35 episodes, somewhere
in there.
We started in January. I do once a week, every week, religiously.
Yeah.
And it's a blast. It's called Play with Pain. It's on Podcast One or Apple Podcasts, and or you could just Google Chet Waterhouse. It'll probably pop up there too.
That's how I found it.
Yeah, and what it's all for the goof. It's about 30 to 35 minutes. Ideally, sometimes it goes a little longer. If I got somebody who's into something, I don't want to cut them off. Mm-hmm. But I have literally sponsored segments where I have actually 2 or 3 actual real sponsors.
Yeah, I've listened.
And I try to handle them at the top And then when I do their spot, I make it very clear that it's one of the legitimate sponsors. As opposed to Maserati, the Jewish sports car. As opposed to those joke ones. So it's been a blast. It's like an alter ego, and I have a great time doing it. And yet, I can still kind of interview somebody inside of that.
That's what I'm so interested in. Is you're interviewing and people that you have a relationship with before.
Some, yes, and some not.
Okay,
yeah.
The ones I listened to, I think you did have at least some sort of relationship with, but then you're talking to this person not as you. It's you, but not you.
Right. It's very wild, but it's fun, and it gives me an excuse to ask a lot of, I would say, politically incorrect questions, or ask politically correct questions in an incorrect manner. Mm-hmm. Chet can screw up anything. Hey, can I say she's got a nice caboose, or am I going to get whipped off in that whole #MeToo thing? Can I say that? He just can't, help himself, which is why he's minor league, but has the enthusiasm. Chet will call any event and call it like it's his 7th game of the World Series. That's the charm of him. He's not bitter at all. He loves it, and he loves interviewing people. And I've had everybody on, from Bob Costas to Rich Eisen, to comedians like Kathleen Madigan and the Sklar brothers and Alonzo Bowden, and young guys like Alex Edelman and Francisco Ramos, and
you've had some
Randy Liebman on, and
you've had some crossover with this podcast with guests.
Yes,
Wendy, I wrote some down here. We've both had on Sklar brothers.
Yes,
J. Elvis Weinstein.
Yes.
Jimmy Pardo.
Yes.
Jackie Cation.
All of them great guests.
Joel Madison.
Everybody crushed it.
Yes. Wendy Liebman.
Yes. I've had people say, I don't know a lot about sports, and I go, better. Even better.
Okay, so one I didn't listen to that I want to go back to is Jackie Cation's. And I know that
great.
She knows very little. Doesn't follow sports, doesn't give two shits.
No.
Okay.
Fantastic.
You made it work.
Oh, my God, yeah. Because first of all, I don't need to talk sports.
Yeah.
We can talk about anything. And I want to get into their careers or whatever might be happening in my guest's life.
Yeah.
But I like the idea that I'm doing it on a time clock. I think it adds a level of drive to it. And intensity. So, brother, we're running out of time. I'll say stuff like that in the middle of the interview just because I want to keep it moving.
Yeah.
And I think it makes people sort of laser focus a little bit. It kind of gets them focused. Plus, the hook of the podcast is it's like 30, 35 minutes, but we're going to hit what's going on in their lives. I do an expanded update at the head of the podcast. I do like 4 minutes now. I was doing just 2. I'm doing a full 4 minutes at the top. Then I do about 10 minutes talking to the guest, and then we do a couple of fun things, one of which is Advice Corner, where I ask legitimate advice from my guest. I try to keep it fun.
And they can answer it seriously or
they
make
can
it a
do
joke.
Whatever they want. I asked Sarah Tiana, you're a traveling comic. What's your biggest travel tip? And she just said, pick one airline and stick with it. Mm-hmm. And I thought, man, that is brilliant. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually working on a book of Chet Waterhouse sponsors, all these crazy, ridiculous motorboats, just a little more fun than Hooters. Those. Mm-hmm. So all my sponsors, I'm going to have an illustrator do fun illustrations for it. But then I'm going to pepper it with things like that from Advice Corner, because I got great advice from a lot of people.
This is something
Wayne Fetterman's travel tip was take the pen that they give you on the desk that you're never going to use, and use it to close that final little gap in your curtains that never closes. Clip your pen top right to that and close it, and you'll get a great night's sleep. So there's travel tips, there's career tips, there's writing tips. There's all kinds of stuff. So one corner is Advice Corner, and then I do what I call the Fiery Four, which is really, if it has to be, it can be the only delving into sports in the entire podcast. Okay. That one I do try to make sports just because I think it's funnier. For me, it's a satire of all the hot takes and blazing questions and whatever else is out there.
You're in the hot seat. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I do try to ask legitimate questions, and if it's somebody I know it doesn't have any interest in sports, I might slide it that way a little bit. But I'll also say, who's your pick to win the World Series and why? And it doesn't have to be athletic, and Jackie will or somebody will just go, you know what? I must admit, I like the powder blue that the Dodgers are sporting. That's fine.
Sure, why
that's
not?
fine, and then move on.
Yeah.
And then if I know I have somebody with some sports acumen, I'll dig in a little bit.
Sure. Sklar Brothers, I haven't listened to. I'm sure it was heavy sports.
Yeah, Sklar Brothers,
Yeah.
Dennis Miller. Dennis and I just had a ball.
I listened to that one, and I want to compliment you. He thinks you are the funniest person on the planet.
Well, thank you very much.
That's what I got from listening to that. He thinks you are
Yeah.
the shit, the nothing better.
He and I go back to 1984 in Los Angeles. I had just moved out from Minneapolis. He had just moved out essentially from Pittsburgh. I think he'd spent a little time in New York, perhaps.
Okay.
And we became fast friends by sitting in the back of clubs together, not getting spots or getting spots that were brutally late.
Yeah.
And we just started to bond a little. We liked each other's acts a lot, and we're kind of two sides of the same coin. We write similarly. I'm a little brighter. He's a little darker. And I think in retrospect, he had a much more focused persona, which is why I believe he shot through when he shot through and as quickly as he did. But we loved to write for each other. We just loved to kick jokes around. We had a great time. We were both sports nuts. And actually, I was already doing Chet a little bit in my act, and he fell in love with the character. And he does sort of a counter to that, like Chet's color guy. And we would sit there literally when I executive produced and wrote on, which was a tremendous privilege, Dennis Miller Live on HBO. We won 2 Emmys, but we'd sit around the writers' room, and if he and I got started, it would be 45 minutes.
Yeah.
We could not stop.
Awesome.
And we would just constantly pivot on speaking of was the phrase, oh, brother, that's going to hurt him. I tell you, man, oh, man, Nixon in some trouble now, some health troubles, got a tube down his throat. Speaking of something down your throat, Cobb's choking this one away. So we would pivot constantly on speaking of and then try to make it as absurdist as possible.
Yeah.
And for 5 minutes, it would kill the room. And then they would have to leave because they were so sick of it. And we would go another 40 minutes. We couldn't stop each other. So we hadn't done it in so long. I haven't seen Dennis in so long. So it was a chance for him to do that again. And he's brilliant.
I encourage people that have ever been a fan of Dennis Miller stuff for, maybe it was 20 years ago, maybe it was 5 months ago.
Yeah.
Check out his appearance on your podcast. It's
thanks.
really good.
And it's pretty much just wall to wall for the goof. That's the idea of the podcast. I will slip in some remarks here and there that might feel topical, but I generally spread them evenly on both sides of the bread. And they come out of Chet's twisted mouth. So, it's more like, man, their path to the playoff is as dangerous as Kavanaugh's to the Supreme Court. It's more like something like that. There are other better platforms for political debate. I just want people to have a good time on the podcast.
Are you doing something with Louis Anderson?
Well, we have just recently sat down to discuss some projects. Louis is hot, and rightly so, off of his performance on Baskets as the mom. He's, I believe, got a couple of Emmys for it.
Yeah, didn't win the most recent one, but was nominated again.
Yeah, and I mean, he's just killing it. He's so good. And he has spent a career being prepared for that. So he has projects of his own that he wants to go now. And as everybody knows, you strike when the iron's hot. So he's working on some production deals at some good networks and places. And he wants to make sure he can line up some projects that have a chance at going. And actually, the one he loves is Chet Waterhouse. I've written a animated script for Chet, which is just Chet on the road with his sidekick, Scotty Nordquist, who's a former major league pitcher who blew his arm out catching a celebrity first pitch from Lady Gaga. He trips and breaks his arm, and his career's over. So he's real bitter, but Chet's gung-ho. And then they have like a hot 22-year-old super smart, super attractive producer woman out of New York who spends her entire time trying to get off this gig. And she's a master of the phone, so she's on her phone constantly working. But, this is a stopgap gig for her. And what they do is it's called Hello Again, Everybody. And they go from town to town, mostly in the Midwest, doing these horrific minor league weird sporting events. And they travel by van from one to the next. And there's 2 or 3 per episode, so I know there's these islands of just idiocy. And one of the reasons it's animated is so that we can do the International Speed Fishing Championships. 14 degrees, the ice is firm. Welcome to Cheddar Falls, Wisconsin. It's a perfect day for speed fishing, which, if you don't know, is a combination of speed skating and ice fishing. Norway's won 11 of the last 12. Last year they won it. Man, they blistered it. Lap time, 52.3 seconds and 9 pounds of walleye. But Japan's going to give them a run for their money. And young upstart USA could come around the outside. Let's see. So it's idiot sports that we just create and animate, and then, of course, it goes haywire. Uh-oh, look out, Japan's got their lines tangled. They're going too fast for this. Oh, brother, there's an eye out. It's rolled right over here. So,
love it.
It'll be that. It'll be the interstate barehanded culvert hunt. Last year's winner, Tommy Wench, he pulled out a live beaver and a refrigerator. So it's just insane stuff like
love
that.
It.
And Scotty Nordquist throws in funny comments about how minor league it is without really upsetting anybody. And they work for a mystery online network in New York that's trying to reshape and reform itself and rebrand itself. And in that process, the only thing they can count on for programming is these idiots they have on the road who they're paying next to nothing to do this. And they go from town to town and call these stupid events. It's almost like the Red Bull network back when they had really zero.
Oh, yeah.
And they were literally doing, it's drone racing, So it's that kind of level of stupidity.
Would this be would you be talking about this?
Or there are a couple of places that are now looking to do the Adult Swim model, which is like 11 minutes, 15 minutes.
With spots, sure.
And it would fit perfect into that as well. So, and it's just about their travails on the road, their real lives intertwined with these idiotic events.
Would you be talking about this if you hadn't started the podcast?
I don't think so. I think the podcast gives the character legitimacy and traction. Yeah. And I might add, I'm number 1 in the Podcast One Sportsnet football pool. Right now, everybody, you go right down the line. It doesn't matter who it is. Danny Patrick. Doesn't matter if it's Rich Eisen, Adam Carolla. I'm beating them all right now. They can eat my dust. I know it's only week 4. I should probably roll back the trash talk.
Congrats on that. That's awesome.
It's fun. So the podcast gives it some credibility.
Yeah.
And as more and more people listen to Play with Pain on Podcast One, it'll allow me an actual marketing tool that then I can present to the network and say, I've got so-and-so listeners to the podcast. I think we got some legs here.
Yeah. How close do you pay attention to, as somebody who's been in the business for a while and, as a writer in the past and currently and whatnot, how close do you pay attention to, like, the new TV shows that come out?
I try to. There's so many. I mean, there's so many platforms now that it's wild. So I do have to hunt and peck a little more than I used to.
Like if something like let's say I don't even have a show in mind. Just something new. There's a new sitcom on CBS. Is Wednesday nights. I don't have one in mind. Just something. Is this something that you probably heard about 8 months ago when they were shopping it around?
Maybe. I get as much of that info from my wife as I do from a manager or trade papers or anything like that, or trade sites or anything like that, because she'll scour it. At some point, I did tell my wife, I have to stop watching TV and start writing it.
Okay.
Or else we may not. The mortgage lenders are not going to be thrilled.
Well, there you go. Okay. Sure.
So I'm trying to spend a little more time working on my projects. But if I hear something, I'll roll it out, or try to. We'll watch. My wife can tell in like 3 minutes. I can generally tell in 2 or 3 minutes if we're going to like a comedy or not.
Sure.
But I'll give it more time. I'll give it at least through episode 1 and halfway through episode 2, just because I know things can change drastically on a production.
Sure.
Between episode 1 and episode 2. So I'll try to ride it out. And if after a couple episodes it's still not quite doing it for me, then I'll kind of let it go.
Yeah.
There's something on HBO called Insecure that I need to check out. I haven't had a chance to do it yet. I liked Annie McBride's stuff. I thought Vice Principals was just...
Oh, I never caught that. Yeah.
Just crazy funny. Crazy funny. And tonally different than anything I'd ever seen. And just such a kick to see guys who know what they're doing getting a chance to do it. And by guys, I mean men and women. I mean comedians. I mean writers. I mean directors. People in showbiz getting the chance to do what they do and then doing it. And he's got another one coming out about a televangelist that John Goodman plays the televangelist.
Oh, I just saw a headline about that. Yeah.
And Adam, oh God, what's his name? Adam Levine's in, not Adam Levine, the actor.
Adam Driver? No.
Valentine, I think his last. I can't remember. Kid out of Workaholics.
Oh, Divine.
Adam Devine, thank you. Adam Devine is in it, and Danny's in it, and Danny McBride, who's freaking hilarious, and John Goodman, who's money. Mm-hmm. So I can't wait for that. But I like to hear about little things like that, and then, or like we just deep dived into Deadwood.
Oh,
and now we're blasting that out, my wife and I, and it's freaking great. I think Timothy Oliphant is extremely talented, just both funny and a great act.
See, know what you can do now is if you like, have you finished that series or how far?
No, we're almost at the end of season 1.
Okay, because I saw a few of those, but I didn't really watch it. But I know that now that's one of those shows I feel like I've heard like, oh, those first 2 seasons were amazing. Now you could listen to people's advice and like if they say 3 and 4, I don't know that that's a fact, but like let's say 3 and 4 sucked by popular opinion, you don't have to waste your time, or would you?
I would still try it.
You would, okay,
because you never know what people. Nowadays, you just don't know. I mean, we're in such a crazy place in this country, period. Mm-hmm. And it's seeping into every aspect of culture. And I always remember, I use Joe McCarthy, Senator Joe McCarthy as an example, who started with a great head of steam. And believe me, this could happen on either side of the political spectrum. The fact to me is this. Started with a tremendous head of steam, loses that steam with the Senate Army McCarthy hearings, then gets disgraced, gets drummed out of D.C., still had a 35% approval rate. You know what I mean? Uh-huh. So there's some people, whether it's a movie or politics, you're just not going to talk them out of what they think. So even though they might say season 3 and 4 suck, I might go, meh. You know what? I'm going to check it out because I'm not sure you know what sucks means. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. We'll see when we get to season 3.
Mm-hmm. Does your when you just said sucks made me think of this thing. You have a 9-year-old, 10-year-old? How old's your kid now?
She'll be 10 in a week and a half.
My daughters are now 12 and 10. I was talking to a friend of mine a few weeks ago, ran into him. He was with his son, who's probably, what would he probably be in first grade, I would say? Maybe kindergarten. And we were swapping stories. I hadn't seen my buddy in a while, and I said something about, blah, 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 and I said sucks. And then I went, my daughter just told me that in her 5th grade class, the teacher said they're not supposed to say things suck anymore. They're not supposed to say, not because it's a swear word, just maybe to avoid negativity or something. I don't know. They're not. She was told me they're not supposed to say things suck anymore.
Yeah.
So my buddy's son goes, I'm not supposed to say that either. And I went, why not? I go to Spanish immersion school.
Wow.
I thought, you just said something, this kid just said something super funny and has no idea.
Yeah.
But the reason he's not saying it is because he speaks Spanish at school. He has no idea how funny that is.
Yeah, that's great. That is really great. Yeah, I do have a 10-year-old, and as I say in my act, there's worse things than bad language that I can accidentally pass on to my child.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
My daughter, who's 10, gets out of a couch this way. Oh, because she hears me get out of a couch that way. So I don't think that's serving her well.
That's nice. I have a football question for you. Did
Sure.
you see Isaiah Crowell? He's a running back that used to play for the Browns. He scored a touchdown a couple weeks ago. Took the football, wiped his butt with it, and then threw it into the stands in Cleveland.
And
now
Cleveland went on to win that game.
He now has an endorsement from one of those butt wipe companies.
Well, a young man's turned it to the good. They ain't lying when they say bad press is good press. No press is bad press. What's the phrase? I can't remember. That's why I'm in the minors. That brought to you by Kaleidoscope Eye Drops. Don't just get the red out. Enter a magical world.
I like that one. I like them all. Don't think I've heard that one. So, yeah, there you go. You can embarrass yourself, piss off your boss, and still get an endorsement out of it.
Yeah. And that harkens back to when Randy Moss
Did the fake mooning.
mooned the crowd in Green Bay.
Yeah.
The only one who was genuinely upset was Joe Buck.
Right.
Everybody else was like, Packer fans were loving that because they do that to the Vikings on the way into the stadium.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of the word sucks, have you ever Googled Joe Buck sucks during a game he's broadcasting?
Wow, no, I have not.
Wow. Do that when you're getting bored during a football or baseball game. Holy cow.
I think he calls a great game. I think he calls a great game. I think he calls a great baseball game specifically. But I like him on football, too. I think the only time he gets on thin ice is when he's out chasing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, maybe.
When something either demands an observation from him on short notice, or when the moment seems to call for humor.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys, though, get out on thin ice when they think something's funny, and it ain't. Or it's not that funny. And then sometimes it is genuinely funny. There are guys who can really pull that off. And then sports announcers bat a certain percentage that you don't have to. As a comedian, you have to bat, somewhere between 900 and 1,000% to do your job right.
Yeah.
A sports announcer with comedy can bat 320 and they're crushing it, which means 1 out of every 3 things they say is funny.
Yeah.
So, and that's
some
great for
attempt
them.
more than others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I think all those guys they can kind of get on a little thin ice when something suddenly presents itself that demands a response.
Yeah.
And I think Joe probably in that Randy Moss moment probably felt, especially because it wasn't that far removed from the Justin Timberlake, Janet Jackson halftime debacle.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So everybody in the world of broadcast sports was probably concerned their jobs were in jeopardy. So.
Not on my watch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Joe got on the bike and backpedaled fast on that one. Probably wisely so, but it is a funny moment. That is a disgusting act, I think he said, which is a great quote.
And now Randy Moss is an announcer, in
Right.
broadcasting.
And we'll find out the pitfalls of that himself, I'm sure, at some point.
I think so, too. Is there anything else we should be mentioning besides that people need to come to Acme? Because we'll post this today.
Oh, great.
Thursday. So
yeah,
people,
come on down. We're going to just go loosey-goosey this week.
How much road work have you done since you were here last?
Well, I just did. I did some dates, spring, fall, and summer in front of Brian Regan because I executive produced and wrote on his show that is premiering on Netflix Christmas Day.
Oh, awesome.
It's called Stand Up and Away with Brian Regan, and it's a sketch show, essentially, with a lot of his stand-up woven through it.
Okay. Yeah, I remember
real fun, real funny.
You mentioned that a year ago, so that's done now.
So it's
awesome.
come to fruition.
Good.
And I did dates with him, and we just did a tour in Florida. Did 4 dates in Florida, and then Athens, Georgia was the last date.
All right.
So I've been out there having fun, and I'm really looking forward to this and just kind of laying it out there.
You had Brian on your podcast too, right?
I did have Brian on, and the funniest thing we did happened after the battery went dead. It was the one, I did 2 people via remote, and the battery died right as Brian and I did something stupid on the end of it. But we'll capture it again at some point.
Yeah, well, I've had those problems here.
I bet.
We've recorded whole episodes and then, oh, by the way,
technological snafu.
it's gone.
It's gone. Oh, brother, we got to take a break. Hey, while we take a break, why don't you take a break? For Sweet Co's Penicillin Nut Bar, munch the pain away with Sweet Co.
Did you bring your family with you this time?
Did not.
Did not.
Not this time.
You're
I'm
rolling
blasting
solo.
in and out. My kid just had a little surgery on her hip, so she's recovering from that and wasn't really travel ready.
Sure.
She loves to travel.
Okay.
And then my wife pulled her Achilles, strained her Achilles, so she's not travel ready. So
Shouldn't you be back there?
I'm trying to
Your healthy body?
trying to get in and out and get back there. Fortunately, we got my daughter out of a wheelchair and kind of out of her walker for a lot of it. So
wow.
she's more mobile than she's been in since the middle of July.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, continued success, Jeff.
Thanks.
Come back soon.
Anytime. I'm here. I'm telling the jokes. Fill these seats.